Hey guys, this is Eckhartsladder. Hello and welcome to another Star Wars Squadrons video over here on X2, and I truly hope that I've got this introduction running for hundreds and hundreds of videos. I'm so excited for Star Wars Squadrons. I can easily see it being another major arm of X2. I'd honestly love it to provide some of the most in-depth Squadrons content on YouTube, so if that's something you're interested in, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Anyway, today we got a pilot briefing from EA, which dealt with some more nuance of how Squadrons gameplay will actually work. So let's talk about it. And I'm just going to generally go through this in order, then I'll add my opinions, and if you just want to read through the thing yourself, I'll make sure to include that down in the description. So starting off, it is confirmed that there will only be 4 starfighters for each side, at least at launch, and we do know that the game is meant to launch with all of its included content or all of its planned content, so we may not get any more starfighters for Squadrons. Each one of these fighters will have primary weapons, countermeasures, hull outfitting, engines, and 2 auxiliary abilities, and this would include missiles or repair droids. But some starfighters will also have shields. And it later goes on to detail that this includes all of the Rebel fighters and also the TIE Reaper. So, at the core of Star Wars Squadrons is something that I think a lot of us hoped would be in the game, and that's power management. Now, this isn't anything new, but we do get some new details in this briefing about how power management and shields will work. One thing that I find really interesting is the fact that if you max out power to one subsystem, you will get some form of unique ability. So let's go over that, and I will note too that the article says that there will be both a simplified power control method and a more sophisticated one. Not quite sure how that works, but I'm interested. Anyway, if you divert all power to your engines, you get a large boost. And it says not unlike what Poe Dameron does in The Last Jedi, and I think that's actually language that's been used elsewhere. If you divert power to your lasers, they'll recharge much faster, but if you put the power to max, you'll basically take overcharged shots, so kind of just like it sounds like. You'll power up your lasers past their normal point and let off a lot of energy at once before sort of returning to normal output. And it seems like these abilities, however, only really charge up when they're not being used, so if you have an enemy in front of you, your sort of high-powered charge shot won't accrue. You'll have to actually stop shooting, and it seems to be the same with engines. So maybe before you take a big run on a capital ship, you slow down and let your engines get that charge up, and then when needed you hit the boost. Or before you go into a big engagement, maybe you stop firing for a minute and just let your shots charge. The risk with this, however, is that these abilities will only charge up when all power is diverted to one system. So what that means is that while they're charging up, you'll be very, very vulnerable. So next is shielding, and if you put all of your power in one shield, it gives you an overshield ability, which is up to 200% extra shield. Personally, I don't think that this is a technique I will be using a whole lot, because you can also achieve 200% shielding by shunting your energy around your ship. So you have the ability to put your ship's shields either forward or backwards. And the way Jay, the community manager, sort of described it on Reddit is, imagine that you have a pool of 200% shield energy. Typically it would be both 100 on front and back, however, maybe you're getting shot from behind. Maybe your shields go down to 50 and you bring the energy from the front to the back, and now you have 150 behind protection and 0 at front, if that makes any sense. I know it's a little bit confusing. For ships that don't have shields, i.e. the TIE Bomber, the TIE Interceptor, and the TIE Fighter, it seems like you can do the overcharged energy ability right away, which I think is really cool. This is what the article describes it as. This is an effective response to an emergency situation where you need an immediate laser overcharge but are willing to have barely functioning engines, or an instant speed boost but with little to no offensive capabilities. And for this reason, I can actually see the TIE classes being somewhat a higher skill, which I think is really, really interesting. But there's also the caveat that constantly having one of your starfighter's power systems maxed out isn't always wise. If your lasers are at full power, you'll be moving slower and or have weaker shields. You'll want to manage your power balance regularly to fit the situations you're in so that you can stay in the fight longer. At any time, you'll be able to rebalance your ship's powers to an evenly distributed state with a single button press though, so it's easy to to recalibrate in the heat of battle. I can definitely see this being something done on maybe the D-pad. This is 100% my just random guess, but I think it'll be something like this. The simplified controls will have left D, for example, put more power in shield, and maybe there'll be 2 states, and then it will evenly draw from the other elements, lasers and engine. So as a made-up example, maybe you click left D twice to give you full shields, and then both the other 2 will be lowered to the same amount. And then if you want everything back, maybe you click down D. If you want to put up on the engines, maybe it's up D. I think you guys get the idea. And then the more advanced sort of control scheme that's mentioned earlier would be using the D-pad to go through and sort of take power down, which is then pooled and free to be redistributed. However, that would just be my guess, and I think it'll be some sort of system like that, because remember, this game is meant to be played on keyboard and mouse, but also controllers. Anyway, a fourth metric is hull integrity, and this one is really interesting. Your ship's health will not automatically regenerate, unlike shields, and as your hull integrity drops from 100 towards 0, your ship will become visibly more damaged. However, it can be repaired by astromechs, repair components, and presumably this is both from your own ship and from support ships, and by returning to a hangar, which on your flagship that is. And we know the hangar will also be somewhere where you can switch fighters, and most likely will automatically renew your munitions. The astromech thing is interesting because it's only the X-wing and the Y-wing that have astromechs, and Jay actually said something pretty cool in the comment section. Even if you are somehow repaired back to 100% on the battlefield, your ship's physical damage, like the cracks in your windshield, for example, will not be fixed. For that, you actually have to return to the flagship. I think that's really cool, and I'll be interested to see whether that actually affects gameplay. I assume it will somewhat, at least. The article then says that to resupply, you don't actually have to fly within the hangar, but simply fly underneath. So presumably that's some sort of different mechanic than actually going in to repair or swap out your ship. One last thing about astromechs though, it'd be really cool if we could get some sort of customization, maybe choose the astromech model or a paint color, but I'm sort of doubting it at this point because it's not something we've seen yet. But also, will you be able to damage an enemy's astromech to stop them from recharging? Pretty interesting to think about. That's something that you could do in the Rogue Squadron games. Alright, so finally the article spends a little bit of time going into the classes slightly more in depth. I'm not going to spend as much time on this, but it actually confirms that TIEs have higher agility, speed, and offensive capabilities than the Rebel ships, I guess, and that they can divert emergency power into engines or lasers, and that's because they don't have shielding, of course. As we know, fighters are very flexible. They can usually take a hit and can also engage capital ships at least somewhat. They're great for an all-purpose playstyle, and this includes the X-Wing and the TIE fighter. Interceptors are uniquely tailored for dogfighting. They have high speed and lasers, but they're not very sturdy, and although they can give out a lot of damage, they're not going to be surviving if they're taken a whole lot. Bombers, of course, are meant for attacking enemy capital ships, but aren't terrible in a dogfight either. They're very slow, but they'll also be well protected and will have very deadly cannons if you're unfortunate enough to get in their way. Then, of course, to me, is the most interesting and unique and mysterious of the classes. That is the support starfighters. That's the TIE Reaper and the U-Wing, both ships from Rogue One, actually. I'm basically just going to read this section as is. These ships are dedicated to keeping their allies in the fight by resupplying and repairing them, but are also uniquely suited for building out defensive and offensive capabilities. They have the ability to use tractor beams to stop or slow enemies, drop mines to entrap or take out foes, and deploy turrets on the go to bring some additional firepower to a location, changing the way both squadrons fight and fly. Though they're less agile than other starfighters and don't usually deal as much damage, they're great at disabling enemy ships while also helping their squadron, making them excellent to have on your wings for any engagement. I'm kind of wondering whether maybe these ships will be limited to 1 per squadron, but either way, it seems like you're definitely going to want at least one of these support ships in your fleet at all times. The final little blurb in here is very neat. It's about sort of the designing of starfighters and their cockpits specifically. There's a few really cool things that I picked out of here. I'm just going to go through them quickly. First of all, they actually built these cockpits for the actors performing motion capture, and if you watch some of the actual gameplay footage, you can actually see hands and stuff moving dials, so I wonder to what degree that's going to happen in game. They also spend a lot of time figuring out how these ships would have worked in both the original movies, so what the cockpits would have looked like, but practically how the ships would actually fly. So what the rudders do, how the stick works, where the buttons would realistically be if you were designing a Star Wars starfighter. And finally, this is probably the coolest part for me, you can also play the game in an instruments only mode. This turns off all in-world UI elements, so objective highlights and whatever else, so you have to look at everything on your dashboard and nothing else. This is basically meant to jack up the immersion, and I imagine if you get like a VR headset and a flight stick, you'll be in for a really fun and immersive time. But that's all I have for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of the recent pilot briefing. If you want to read it yourself, I'll include it down below. Also, for anyone who's looking to pre-order this game on the Epic Workshop, you can also use the code Eckhartsladder. I don't think it gives you a discount or anything, but it helps me out. I got that set up when I did a Fortnite integration or something. I don't really remember, but it is a thing. Anyway, for more Star Wars Squadrons content, hopefully coming very soon, make sure you subscribe to this channel, turn notifications on, and follow me, Charlie, and Corey on all social medias. Join the Discord. You guys know the drill. Until next time, be safe, have a good one, and may the Force be with you.